Welcome to the Dr. Diamond Podcast, where doctors learn from industry experts proven methods to grow their practices like the top 1%. And now your hosts, President of OfficeAutomated.com, Robert Barton, and the CEO of New Patient Group, founder of the Dr. Diamond Club, national keynote speaker, and featured in Dental Economics, Forbes, and CNBC, Brian Wright.
Welcome back to the Dr. Diamond Podcast. This is Robert Barton, co-host, along with Brian Wright. How are you, Brian?
I'm doing good. Hope everyone's good out there. Sitting here on a sunny day in Houston, looking out of the broadcast window here with some new homes across the street that are being built. So how you doing?
Doing well. I think we have a great show today. It's entitled, People Respect What Gets Inspected.
Yeah. I think that people are going to love this. It's kind of the whole realm of our program. I know that, and it's one of the biggest reasons you created Office Automated is, how do you have a mechanism to track things that really no other business is tracking and then hold people accountable for it?
Yeah, and we're going to talk about it within the context of profitability, and specifically a case study of one of our customers. They do knee injections, so we advertise for them and do their pay-per-click advertising and control all that, but we also track a lot of stats, and we're going to be going over the stats from this particular clinic, and I think it's going to be mind-blowing the opportunity that it really all boils down to staff training. It's staff accountability and staff training that makes these programs and these advertising methods successful or not.
Well, and listeners out there, when we dive into the case study that Robert's going to start talking about, we're really going to go in depth, and it proves that the vast majority of business owners, they look at the wrong thing. If you're doing a pay-per-click ad, great. As long as you're looking at the right things, which we're going to help teach you on this podcast today, then fantastic. I just believe that a lot of people are looking at the wrong numbers whenever they run ads like that. Interested to get more into this case study, so I think it's going to open some eyes out there.
Yeah, so and I think the first thing to talk about with regard to employees and a new marketing program is we have found that employees are not nearly as excited about the company's new marketing program as the owner of the company. So
yeah, imagine that.
Yeah, new patients represent work, at medical offices, and I think we see some of the evidence of that with these numbers we're going to talk about. And just to give you a kind of a brief overview, in about 2 months of advertising for this particular client, we have generated 209 leads. This is off Facebook at a total cost of $6,500 in ad spend, which is really good overall. And that's a $31 cost per lead overall. Now, these are already leads that are paid for. So how does this translate to the ROI? Well, in this particular case, they have scheduled 72 consults, and this is by phone calls. So the staff essentially calls the leads, and they try to make contact with them. And it's a lot to do with the follow-up. It's a lot to do with the conversation that they have while the lead's on the phone. I mean, there's a lot of variables with regard to how they get these people on the schedule. And then they've had 57 missed appointments out of the 72 consults that have been scheduled. Now, 15 have gone on to be paid patients, which is good. And these are $3,000 patients. It's a $3,000 service, essentially, that they're offering, and mostly covered by insurance. And that's a 79% missed appointment ratio, or 79% of the people who schedule miss the appointment. Does that blow you away at all, Brian?
Well, it doesn't, only because I've been doing this for so long, and I know how these companies, and it really, again, it's any type of business, but I know how the practices, dental, GP, orthodontic, your clientele that you're talking about right now, it's what we talk about. They do things backwards by going out and spending money on this, and meanwhile, there's no systems on how to answer the call, on how to overcome the objections, on how to give the same excitement that you as the business owner would give if you were on the phone. Robert talked about this just a second ago. The facts are your people don't share that same excitement that you do. They're not the business owner. So the best employee on the planet can't be as excited as you would be when you're doing marketing. So no, I'm not blown away by that at all. It's very standard. Now, maybe not this bad. Maybe people don't lose this many opportunities, but it's consistent across the board with marketing campaigns are being done that people drop all kinds of opportunities.
It's because there's no system. It's not that difficult to schedule a patient who has a cold or who has, something that they really have an immediate need for. But if you're advertising and marketing for a service that's not just an immediate need, there has to be skills. And if you have high competition in your particular vertical as well, such as with dentistry, the people that are answering your phones and handling these things have to have particular skills and a system to work within. Then they have to be held accountable to that system, and that's through recording the phone calls and basically auditing the phone calls, because a 79% no-show rate is a problem with that conversation.
And it goes back to the title of today's podcast: employees respect what you inspect, and they are not going to respect the things that you want them to if you're not setting proper accountability measures, and if you're not looking at the numbers and finding a way to put a metric to whether or not the system that you have implemented is being improved upon or it's going backwards. You have to base your decisions as a CEO off of statistical, factual data. You can't just go, well, today I feel like going and doing a pay-per-click ad, and if we make 20 grand from it, then it must have been a success. That's not the way it works. Unfortunately, that's the way 99.9% of all healthcare practices out there do it. And the example you gave, in dentistry, if somebody calls and they're in pain, well, you're going to schedule that person. You really have to mess up the phone call not to get them on the books. Same way with your clientele. If someone calls and they're sick, you're going to schedule that patient. We're talking today, guys, about all the other things out there where if that patient doesn't feel that immediate pain, how do you get them onto the books? And how do you track the stats on whether or not your people are doing that at the highest possible levels?
Exactly. And, in this particular case, they have 15 paid, patients out of the 72 consults they scheduled. And that's a $45,000 of revenue that they'll basically obtain. And that's a conservative number. Some of the numbers are as much as 3,500. So I'm actually the 3,000 per patient. It's actually the bottom end value of those patients. So it's at least 45,000. And this particular client, he uses Office Automated, he uses our software. He doesn't use it to its extent because he basically concentrates on a lot of other things. But there is no corporation out there that runs at a very high level that would take an 80% missed appointment rate opportunity and not start working to improve that. Well, part of the problem is, in this particular case, he doesn't even know that he has an 80% missed appointment rate opportunity because I'm the one that did the stats and I did them manually as opposed to his staff actually tracking this stuff real time. So he has literally no idea. It's more like they're making $45,000 to $50,000 or maybe more with these clients, plus their other advertising. And as long as they make more than they spend, they're happy.
And that's the issue. That's the underlying issue is they feel no pain, and they don't feel the pain because the return on investment, even with all these lost opportunities, it's good.
It's a 7 times return on investment. They're basically making 700% on their money,
right?
Which is not bad. Now let's look at an opportunity, a very realistic opportunity. What if you just reduce the no-show rate by 10%? What does that look like? Well, that's going to be 21 paid patients from 15, 6 more essentially. And that's a $63,000 income based on that $3,000 conservative estimate. And that's a 1,000% or basically a 10 times return on investment. And that's just by reducing no-shows by 10%. So let me ask you, that's an $18,000 increase in income, by the way, just by providing a system with that staff member, training the staff member, and holding them accountable to a stat. You got to have numbers in order to show people where they are and where they need to go. That's the only way they'll get better with it. And
well, every once in a while, we do a podcast where I wish the listeners could actually see it because the data we're looking at, really everybody out there, this is what a good CEO does, is you sit down and you look at the data and then you make decisions, systems, training, etc. off of that. So yeah, the 10% increase in people showing up, it shows you why no matter how successful, because we're talking about the example we're given today, guys, it's a successful business. They do very well. They generate a lot of money. But it shows that even the ones that are the most successful have so many areas still of lost opportunity because they're not analyzing the data. Going back to, the employees do not respect the things they should because the CEO, the COO, the business owner, the doctor, whatever it may be, whoever runs the show, doesn't have systems in place to track these stats. And they just lose so much money because of it. Looking at this data that we're seeing, I mean, and we haven't even talked about the other stuff we're going to get into, but just improving the no-shows, 10%, generates, how much did you say?
Another $18,000. Now, that's on a $6,500 ad spend. So they're literally tripling just the reduction in no-shows by 10% would pay for their ad spend 3 times over.
And that goes back to, again, what is a goal? A goal now, looking at the numbers, is what training do I implement with the verbiage skills of my front desk staff who's answering the phone? How can they articulate and put more value on the appointment that person scheduled in order to increase the chances of them showing up at higher levels? That's your goal. You give them that training, you hold them accountable to that training, you continue the training, and then as your numbers increase, you're going to make more money, and that's a result of the goal you set in place. And it sounds simple, but nobody does it. Very few people do it. Look at the numbers this way, analyze them, train, accountability. Very few people do it, but I think everybody agrees that they need to do it. Never had a person go, it makes no sense. I think everyone thinks it makes sense. They just don't know how to do it.
And that goes back to weekly meetings. We're big believers of the book, The Ultimate Sales Machine by Chet Holmes. Fantastic book. If you've not read that book and you're a business owner or want to be a business owner, you have to read that book. But Chet talks about the levels of learning, and he talks about having an hour meeting, and we have an hour meeting in my other business, and it's a training meeting is what it is. We're going over, different things and identifying, problem areas and training, because he says that if you've ever been, and this is a quote from the book, if you've ever been a part of a highly trained team, the sense of confidence that comes with that. The secret to building an excellent sales force, and the phone people, by the way, are a sales force for your business, is in repeating core training on basic skills again and again. The lowest level of learning is memorization, and the highest level of learning is known as synthesis or subconscious competence. That's a quote from The Ultimate Sales Machine, and it could not be more true, what he just said. And your employees literally have to own the ability to follow the system that you put in place, but it doesn't need to be memorized. It needs to be at a subconscious level. They need to own it at a subconscious level so that they can really deliver what we're looking for, which is to get people in the door.
Well, if you ever want to know, everybody out there, what the new patient group program is start to finish, it wasn't based off of the book Robert's talking about, The Ultimate Sales Machine, but if you ever want to know what we're all about, read that book, because every single thing in it is what we do in our, it's scary. It's very scary how similar it is after reading that book. But what Robert's saying is very true. The issue is, we hear it all the time. You put a new patient telephone script in front of a front desk staff. Immediately is, we don't want to be robots, blah blah blah. But the facts are, to ever get to step 2, that synthesis of just knowing it without even thinking about it, you have to first memorize it. So if you, like with us, we have a 6 steps to the new patient call. The first step before you can make it your own and put your own personality into it, which is what we want as a company. It can't stand scripts with robots. That doesn't grow a business. But the facts are, you have to memorize it first. You have to know, look, step 1, greeting. Step 2, identify. Step 3, transition. And just how I just did that, I have the synthesis portion of it where it just comes to my mind and I can make it my own, but I'm still going in the right order. And the book is amazing. It's right on point.
Yeah, I agree. And another point that he made at the end of this particular chapter is, just as basketball coaches must constantly train their players on layup, shots, and blocking, sales managers must constantly train their reps on polishing every angle of the 7 steps to every sale. And what he's talking about here is having there's 7 steps to, an ultimate salesperson. And all of these skills have to be mastered, but you have to repeat them. You have to do them over and over again. And that's the hour meeting. And I think if business owners are not having, weekly training meetings with their staff and referring back to their standard, which should be written down somewhere. We have it in our digital office manual within Office Automated, but it should be written down somewhere. And then you're going to have to track the stats that happen as a result of performance. It's like, you have to be able to measure what is actually occurring with the training that you do. And, that's why everything works together the way it does.
Well, when we do practice analysis before we have clients come aboard, it's a very in-depth one. We ask them a lot of questions on, what is your new patient telephone call percentage per employee and overall as an organization? What's your financial conversion, which is another word for cash flow? A lot of these things, and 100% of the time, the response is, we don't know.
Let me guess, they don't know.
Yeah, exactly. They don't know. But you ask them what their production and collections, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows that number. But the numbers that actually matter, nobody knows. And again, that's
why is that? I mean, I know the answer. I'm going to answer it for you and for the listeners. Why is that? Because the numbers you just mentioned are opportunity numbers. Everyone knows what the production is. They know what the collections are. But how do you define that into an opportunity that can be improved with staff training?
Yeah, and it goes back to the accountability and the training, because you can't train, or it's very difficult to train when you don't know the performance behind what you're training. You can't feel, I think my people are better on the phones. I think my people are better at presenting money. I think they're getting better at 5-star customer service expertise. Well, you have to have metrics that tell you if they are or not. And you have to have your employees be part, because would it be nice if all the stats were automated? Sure, it'd be a beautiful thing. But the reality is the stats, the vast majority of them that actually matter, your staff has to be a part of tracking them and inputting them every single day before clocking out, because those stats can't be automated. And there's hundreds of examples that we could sit here and talk about. But and it's difficult. It's easy when production is just spit out to you. It's difficult to go, hey, Betty, every single day before you leave, you are going to record into the platform how many new patient calls you received, how many new patient calls you scheduled, and where did they hear about them. And then have the platform, which is the beauty of your platform, why we're one of many reasons why we're partnered together, is the platform goes and automatically populates that, so you now know what Betty's new patient call conversion is, and it means that Betty is going to respect her job more, and she's going to respect that stat in the training because you're inspecting that stat, and it's going to help you train better because you're going to know where Betty stands, if she's improving or declining. And it just makes all kinds of sense in the world. But Robert, that quote about the basketball, we talk about that all the time with prospective clients when I'm talking around the country, and there's still, the best businesses, restaurants. We talk about the top 1% quite a bit on this podcast, and they all do the things we're talking about. It's the 99% that will still sit there and go, nah, I don't think that we need ongoing training. Even after you show the stats, you show that, all the top level companies, that's what they do. You'll still get people go, nah, don't think that's for me. And it always blows my mind that we hear that from time to time.
You're exactly right. And then they wonder why they're not growing, or they wonder why their year-over-year numbers are staying the same. You have to do something different in order to get a different result. And it almost always goes back to staff. I've told my staff many times that if I occupied every position in this office, we would probably be twice as busy as we currently are, because I know how I want things done and I do it naturally. But the challenge is getting people that come and go from a medical practice or a dental practice to do things the way you want them done. And it's not easy per se. And if you leave it to their devices, first of all, they're not going to be excited when you get a new marketing program. Second of all, they're not going to be as enthusiastic on the phone. They're not going to put value to the appointment. You get a 70% or 80% missed appointment rate, and it costs money. Literally, this practice not only could pay for their advertising with a 10% reduction on their missed appointments, but also probably their staff costs just with a 10% reduction in missed appointments. What is that worth? How much is it worth to spend a little bit of time, track the stats, make improvement, and then, literally, make $18,000 to $20,000 a month more just by improving that one thing? And who's to say it can't be improved 20% rather than just 10%? We're talking about a missed appointment ratio. 80% of the people miss the appointment.
And like you just said, we're only talking about one particular item. I mean, what if, and maybe we can look at the data and tell the listeners how many just missed opportunities, how many people called but didn't schedule. Because now you not only reduce the 10%, but now let's go and look at the ones that actually called the practice but never even scheduled. Let's say you improve that 10 or 15%. Well, we can start doing the math on how much more this one advertising campaign would be producing. But again, Robert, it goes back to the pain. If the practice feels, because remember, they're not tracking anything. If the business feels like the campaign is producing profit and doing well, it's very hard to sit here and go, with success, that is, doctor, you're losing a ton of money. Well, what do you mean I'm losing a ton of money? I just generated, whatever, 40 grand off of this campaign. Well, yeah, it should have been 100 grand. But the problem is you don't know.
The entire opportunity is $627,000. That's the entire opportunity. So he's basically pulling $45,000 out of a $627,000 opportunity.
Right. That's just it's incredible.
Which is incredible.
It is. It's just incredible. I sit here looking at these stats and just pondering in my mind, and that's what, guys. A lot of the best CEOs out there, we talked about this in other podcasts, is you always make more money correcting lost opportunities than you do when you go out and try to generate new ones. Now, when you combine the two together, that's when you're the best of both worlds. And I think that one of many reasons why the new patient group clientele is very successful is they're doing both. They're generating new ones, but they're also plugging the holes in the boat first. And when you do that, even from this campaign, if they plug the holes from this campaign and they fix them, this campaign produces more than what it's already producing with whatever they generate. What number? How much did they actually generate from this?
45,000.
Yeah. So I mean, imagine if they fixed the no-shows 10%, they increased their scheduling rate 15%. They corrected a couple other things. They probably generate $200,000 from this. And again, that's correcting the holes in the boat.
And that's all staff.
All staff. And then management.
Some of it is marketing because, according to Chet Holmes, and I do believe this, educational based marketing, you've got to put value or more value on the, to the patient with regard to your services. And you have to educate them in order to do that. And that can be done digitally. It can be done on the phone while they're on the, with the staff member. The staff needs to be trained on how to educate, the client with whatever angle. And there's several angles that can be tested. And then, of course, you track that back against the stats. If you're keeping stats in the first place, you can track improvements. And that all goes back to staff training. So even if you come up with something to educate the patient on, reduce the no-show rate, and that didn't work, you can do another one. And again, you're tracking on these numbers the whole time, and you'll dial it in. You got to dial these things in. They don't just happen, without effort.
Well, it's the 3 pillars of success, and we're going to have a podcast in the future about this, everybody out there. But just briefly, the 3 pillars that relate to everything in every single business is management, marketing, ongoing training, which is your staff. So in this particular case, you've got to, from a management's perspective, define what the system is that you want them to do better to improve the no-shows that we're talking about. You've got to do that. Then you've got to train the staff on how to follow that. And then as management, you have to be great at holding your people accountable and have to have measures in place to be able to, again, track the stats. But none of it can be done, and I agree with you about the educational marketing. The value can start based on what type of marketing you're doing. If you're doing a postcard that says, hey, look, new patient exam, or first time to my restaurant advertisement that says like 50% off your plate or, free new patient exam, whatever, you have no value in that advertising. So when they pick up the phone, your people and the verbiage they're using on the phones is the only way to put more value on your business. So if you do other types of advertising, that educational-based, value-based marketing, at least by the time they're calling you, at least they already see some type of value in your business. But it all has to be put together. I mean, staff training, we talk about this all the time, is worthless if management does not know or is unwilling to hold the people accountable to the training. Then you're just spinning your wheels. You don't go anywhere. That's with our program. If we come in there and train the staff, that's why we also train management, because you don't want a situation where you train in the new patient call, then you're 3 months in, you're doing mystery calls, and they're the same way they were a month ago because management isn't listening to the calls, doesn't have weekly ongoing training sessions, and doesn't hold their people accountable.
Yeah, you have to be, recording these calls and then auditing the call and then scoring the call because, with the scoring, again, it puts a number to a subjective, exercise, and that number should be improved as time goes on with that employee. If that employee does not improve, they need to have a conversation. They need to have training that needs to be documented in their HR. There's a whole process that happens with that to protect the practice from eventually needing to get rid of that employee. If they can't perform, they need to be, released, and hopefully with cause, and there's no unemployment penalty there. But you have to have all this documentation, which is, again, why we put everything into the system that we did, because it all works together.
Well, and the stats, it goes back to, are so important. I just had it in my mind where, I had a friend of mine a long time ago, had an Italian restaurant up in Michigan, and this was in Ann Arbor. I got to know him just from going to Michigan football games growing up, and one of the things they had their waiters do, and I don't know what platform they used at the time, but their waiters were responsible after every shift, when they were going home in the afternoon or going home at night, of entering in, hey, look, I sold such and such bottle of wine. I sold such and such liquor. This was the plates that were bought. I sold such and such dessert. And that was entered into a platform that spit out the individual waiter performance on a per table basis every single night, month, year, etc. And I always, to this day, remember it. I thought it was so cool because that's exactly what, one, your platform was created for, and exactly what we used to do on an Excel sheet with our clients until we met. Now it's obviously much more automated, but that's what we do inside the practice, because, again, they're going to respect it more because we and management of that practice are inspecting it. And now you get to see which one of your treatment coordinators is presenting money the best, because you have their percentages all spit out to you because they're responsible for tracking them on a daily basis. So it's like being able to see how much wine, one dental employee, or healthcare employee is selling over the next. You have visibility on that stuff, and it's just awesome. I love it.
It's the only way to do it. There's no question about it. Well, that's all I have, Brian. I just wanted to share these numbers here. This is a case study. As this develops over time, maybe we can share additional insight gleaned from this case study. We didn't even talk about, there's two of these clinics, one in one town, one in another town, and we didn't even talk about the performance of the other clinic. This is the good performing clinic, by the way. The other one is performing much, much lower than this. So, and again, it's a staff issue, but here the title, people or employees respect what gets inspected. I mean, that just take that away from this podcast. If you're listening, you're a business owner. I mean, it's everything that you do needs to be centered around the ability to inspect and have them respect what you inspect. You have to be able to inspect it. You have to be able to quantify it. And I think that makes your business better.
Well, this is something that we could talk about for the next 3 hours at least. I mean, if I got up and did a presentation on this, I would need a part 1 through 10 with 3 hours on each part. But I hope everyone got a lot out there. Obviously something we're passionate about over here. So have the discipline, have something. Even if you start tracking just one extra thing this coming week or next week, whatever it may be, track 1 or 2 extra things that you're not now. Hold the people accountable to that measure, and you're going to be better off for it. We appreciate you guys listening. On behalf of Robert Barton, this is Brian Wright. We will talk to you next time.